Hi everybody, Richard Tromans here again, Artificial Lawyer TV. Today we're doing another product walkthrough, this time with a company called Contract Rabbit, and we'll be looking in particular at their new product, which is called ratemyNDA. To tell us a bit more about it is John and Noah, who's off screen at the moment, but we'll come back later. John, good to have you on the show.
Good to be here, Richard.
Awesome. So, in time-honored fashion, I shall let you tell the audience a bit about yourself, the product, and then do the walkthrough. I'll come back at the end. Please take it away.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you very much for having us, Richard. We're very excited to introduce this new product. Like you mentioned, my name is John Hazley. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Contract Rabbit, and ratemyNDA is our first product. So a bit about my background. I was a corporate lawyer for 7 years. I worked in mergers and acquisitions. And one of the biggest problems that I came across was we would spend a lot of billable hours arguing over what counted as standard language in contracts. And basically, ratemyNDA is our solution to this problem. So what we're going to show you today is the very basic user walkthrough of how the product analyzes NDAs and how it proposes changes to them. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to send our test document to our agent. And at the end of this walkthrough, we're going to check back in and see the response that the agent made. So just going to give it a few instructions here. Attach our document and send that along. Okay, and we'll come back to that in a few minutes. So here's our basic user walkthrough. It's our landing page. Very easy drag and drop for your NDA. And what the model is doing right now is it's taking your NDA and it's comparing it against this group of 250 NDAs, which is what we've built this demo model on. And basically, it's looking for any possible deviations. It's comparing your document against 250 documents, and it's looking for averages. It's looking for parts that stick out. And another thing that it's doing is it's basically identifying both parties' interests in the document and quantifying them into a score here. And you can see this leaderboard of all public NDAs that we have updated for yours. And now it's going to redirect us to the readout page. So basically, you can see how it compares against a broad market corpus of NDAs. And the other kind of element of how you train the model is users can also upload their own NDAs. You don't have to compare against the broad public market, but it might be useful as just a kind of a health test for your NDAs. So what we're looking at this screen, a couple of things. These radar graphs here are kind of illustrating the broad categories of content of your NDA, both for the party and the counterparty. That's basically what we're calling the recipient under the NDA and the discloser. And you can see the kind of broad areas of deviation. Some are closer, some are a bit further out. And then down here, this kind of scatter plot here is the score of your document. It's right there. It's more or less in the middle of the pack. And the interesting thing here about the score is that you can see for NDAs, basically as the document gets better and better for the discloser, it gets worse and worse for the recipient of information. And that really shouldn't surprise us because most NDAs are very, very disclosure favorable. Okay, so these are very high-level ways of analyzing your document. Now we can get into a bit more specific view on the actual document that you have. So what are we looking at here? Basically, you got your document right here. And you can notice that a lot of the words are highlighted in various shades of red. That's a basic analysis of how common or how rare that word is. So the redder it is, the rarer it is. And then over here, this table is a list of all of the sentences in this NDA. And you can see that it's kind of listed in inverse frequency. So the more popular sentences in the corpus of that 250 NDAs are down here, and the more rare sentences are up here. So one thing that should jump out at us here is this sentence right here, and we can go to it. Basically, this sentence is not being recognized by the model, and it's looking through 247 documents, and it's telling you, I've never seen a sentence like this before. So that's one kind of really powerful aspect of the model, that it can make those determinations of rarity very, very quickly. Now, for identifying sentences like that, considering 247 documents is a good thing, because you can say, okay, this sentence has never occurred in any of these documents. However, for a really fine-grained analysis of your document, you don't really want to be comparing against 247 documents. You want to be comparing against kind of a sub-cohort of that broader corpus. And there are a couple of ways to do that. So the first and easiest way is simply to use AI to apply an autofilter based on some very basic metadata from your document. All you got to do is hit apply, and then it's rerun the analysis, but for a much different corpus of only 18 documents. So you can see the frequencies that it's determined for the sentences have changed, and it's kind of pushed up a lot more rare sentences here than it did in the other analysis that we just ran. One more note here I should mention is that these red rows here in the table, these are sentences that it's saying are missing from your document, but are nonetheless present in 50% of the corpus that it's analyzing against. So the other way to run that filtering mechanism is simply to type in just a prompt. And suppose that we are an enterprise user called Telco Industries, and we're in a considering a merger. So we can type in a very specific instruction, and we can get a much better sub cohort of documents to filter against. So let's tell it, consider only unilateral NDAs signed in the past 2 years in the context of a merger with Telco Industries as counterparty, governed by Delaware law, which include a standstill provision that favors Telco. Okay, let's see what we get. Aha. So now it's identified 4 documents in that broader corpus, all of which qualify under all of these parameters that we just gave it. And let's actually expand this. If we look at the sentence ranking now, you'll notice it's much more bifurcated, right? It's much clearer as to what sentences do and do not belong in this document, because Telco Industries has its own set of legacy documents, and it looks like they rarely deviate from them. There's a little wiggle room here. So this is a much better kind of corpus to use when we're actually going to consider how to change this document. And you can really see the granularity of this model when you look at the individual sentences. For this sentence here on no liability, it's picking up this big carve out here. It's throwing up all kinds of red flags, because this carve out is something that in this corpus of documents never gets agreed to. And you can see other examples of this. It's picking up that one word seek there as being very rare. So ultimately, on this screen, this is a lot of information. And the question is, okay, what do we do? How do we actually leverage all of this information to make changes to this document? And what you can do is you go over to the Edit tab here, and you're saying, okay, we are Telco Industries, in other words, the counterparty, the disclosure of information. So we're just going to click that Optimize button for the counterparty. And essentially what is happening right now is the model is reading your document, and the model is also reading those 4 documents in that subcorpus. And it's going through each sentence word by word, and it's making changes based on those 4 documents. So really, it's aligning to exactly the language that you have agreed to before in that specific filtered corpus of documents. this really gives the user a lot of comfort in the actual language that it's adding and deleting from the document, because this is all things that you've agreed to before in your documents. So should take just a few more seconds to add in those missing sentences there, and then we can kind of take a closer look and analyze one of these additions and kind of see how it works. Okay, so that was all of them. Let's take a look at that remedies sentence that we looked at and see what changes it made there. Let's see, where is it? Aha, here it is. So we can see it deleted the word seek, because that was a very rare word, but it also made some additions. It made this, necessity proving damages addition, and it dropped in this reference to the Delaware Uniform Trade Secrets Act. That shouldn't surprise us, because all of the documents that we filtered for are all governed by Delaware law. And if you want to audit, these changes, you can click right here, and that'll take you to the actual document where it got this language from. And it takes right here to the sentence. Right there is where it got that reference from. So it's very, very easy for users to, audit the changes that this is making, which for AI these days is very important. And essentially, the last step here is for the user to be able to provide feedback. And the way that they would do that is simply when the document is all done and signed, all they have to do is go back to the Documents tab here and just drop the document into the train model box here. And so, yeah, that's basically the complete loop of functionality here.
Fantastic. And Noah, anything else you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, maybe one thing just to add to this is, so we showed starting with ratemyNDA as kind of an entry point. And so if you are just somebody who wants to check out their NDA, like an individual user, you're able to use that tool. But it's kind of windowed into our more enterprise offering, which is you could be comparing against the preloaded corpus of NDAs, which we're currently expanding. So this will probably be soon several thousand documents as opposed to several hundred. But you can also, like John mentioned, you can go against your corpus alone. So you can go and bulk upload all of your documents into this tool. And the other interesting thing is we're also focused on expanding this out to many different document types. So this is being shown for non-disclosure agreements. There's a few others that we're targeting next, but we see that we'll be really trying to target the majority of documents that people are working with. And we've spent a lot of work on developing pipelines and automation tools that lets us pretty rapidly import these into the tool. And so it'd be a similar experience for different document types.
Gotcha. Fantastic. Don't know if you want to jump on the video as well there, Noah, but just a couple of questions. So just a very simple one to start with, which is, why not just call yourself Contract Rabbit and keep it like that? Because eventually Contract Rabbit, I imagine, will have multiple types of contract that it will do this for. Just curious, as someone who works in the media, why you're branding it this way.
That's a really good question. I don't think our plan is to make like ratemyDocumentType.com for every type of document we have. But really, here's the real answer. To build this technology for even one document type took us a long time. And we really wanted to prove that it could work for one document type before we expanded to other things. So we just wanted, something that called out a specific document type and a product name. But yeah, I mean, like any startup, we're probably going to change the name of things as things go forward.
Yeah, so I think just rate my contract is probably the best one.
Sure,
there you go. Free gift. All right, moving on. And just so the audience, just so they can recap this a little bit, that mass of NDAs, different NDAs, where have those come from? This is from a customer, an in-house legal team, a law firm's own document management system. These are or ideally this is so, or these are things that have been grabbed from the internet somehow? I mean, where are these? I mean, not for this particular demo, but looking ahead, where will the samples come from?
Well, SEC archives, publicly available archives, we update that corpus on a monthly basis, just based on documents that get uploaded from there. But it's a key question because every AI model these days needs to be audited for what data it's actually trained on. Is it trained on the right data? There are a lot of products out there that are trained on kind of unsigned documents that, to me, I don't think that really qualifies as good data because it's not been kind of rigorously tested in a negotiated process. And that's the key benefit of those documents in the SEC archives is they've all been through an adversarial process, two sides looking at this language and agreeing to it.
Gotcha. No, well, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I guess in the future, I mean, obviously, you just got started. But in the future, I imagine you'll need to be able to connect to your own DMS, because then you're going to get into the mother load of, let's say there's an IP lawyer who is dealing with dozens and dozens and dozens of NDAs for their clients who are having constant, interactions with inventors and entrepreneurs, and all of this is landing on this lawyer's desk. They've got to work through. They're going to want to tap into their DMS, aren't they? They're going to say, right, well, I've got about 4,000 of these. I need to check. Although you could argue that if this person has done 4,000 NDAs in relation to the technology sector, they've probably got a pretty good idea. Which leads me to the next question, which is, you guys clearly think in these very, very structured, almost like mathematical ways. Do you think that most lawyers do? Have you asked other lawyers to use this, and what have they thought about it?
We are in talks with a couple other solo practitioners and enterprise users, and the feedback so far has been overwhelmingly positive.
Right.
Very, very kind of pinpointing the pain point of contract review, trying to leverage all the like you said, 4,000 NDAs that some people have read and written. So I think lawyers by trade are not mathematicians. I think we can all agree.
I mean, there's a very, very, very small number of them who end up doing complex derivatives or maybe on the patent side, but the vast majority are not into maths, really. It's true.
For sure.
And something interesting too is we didn't really go into a lot of detail on this, but the scoring that John was showing, this is actually based on we would call it, I guess, a semi-naive scoring model. And so it is, the foundation of that is natural language. And so we're looking at breaking down a particular clause and saying, if I add these things, if I add, this phrase or this modifier or these additional objects that this verb is applying to, if it's a grant or a restriction, depending on the clause type, what is the impact of that on one of the parties? And the cool thing is that this naive algorithm, basically it scales with other contract types. We do it essentially once, and you can score any contracts with it. Now, there is another layer of expert knowledge on that, which is weighting things, and we will be making that transparent to the user. So that's a lot of times an issue that you have in machine learning is the explainability or the interpretation. What is going on here? What are the decisions being made? And I actually come from more of a cybersecurity background, and that's really important in that field as well. And so that's why we have the reference. Why did the machine learning model choose to include these certain certain missing sentences or these changes in the sentences? But another component which we didn't show yet is, with this change, how is it actually changing the score? So that's something we're also working on adding in. Every point change, you'll see the impact on the score, and you'll be able to see why. And I think that's really important and helpful, for understanding what's in your documents. As John mentioned, we've talked with a number of different either solo practitioners, as well as some people at larger companies like Fortune 500 companies. One feedback that we got, and this was somebody who was working with a team of, I think it was dozens of lawyers, is when somebody new comes to the team, they really don't know what is in the contract. So what is standard at this new place that I'm working? And so being able to go in and actually say, even just as kind of a knowledge base, okay, this particular clause, how common is it? What is the percentage? even individual terms within that. What is the impact within our own knowledge base? I think that's something that where we think that's a differentiator, because there are some other tools where you can go and view all public contracts, but you extend that with your own contracts and really get into kind of an explained breakdown analytically in terms of the frequency and everything, as well as then the next step is, well, what does that matter? Well, how does that change the score?
Gotcha. And just to wrap up, I mean, it's fair to say that you're very much at the sort of startup stage. And if people are watching this, if a lawyer, whether in-house or a law firm, is watching this and would like to bring this into their firm, their business, I guess they just come and contact you, and I guess you haven't built out a sort of strict pricing mechanism yet. This is to be negotiated client by client, perhaps?
It is. We think that the implementations we're going to build are going to be pretty tailored and manicured, given where we are as a company. We're very young, very early stage. So we have the flexibility to be able to do that at this point. And yeah, pricing would kind of follow that.
Gotcha. Actually, I just thought of one extra one. Very quickly, this is a mix of machine learning and natural language, and LLMs. This is not completely stuck on either end of the AI spectrum. You're using a mix of both.
We are. Yeah, that's a good question. And so I guess the way I would put it is we are using large language models, especially for text alignment, and for some of the less structured parsing of the corpus. But we do have, I think, differentiators. We do have also a structured component where when we're going through, like I mentioned, natural language processing and figuring out that particular grammar of certain sentences, and so it's not. I'd say there's a little bit more controls and kind of guardrails, as opposed to just saying, let me train this one large language model on 1,000 documents and just generate text from it, right? So everything is kind of labeled and aligned, and we have a human in the loop right now, which is primarily John, but going through and saying, okay, these sentences have been aligned, let me go and review them, make sure that they're being tagged correctly, and then doing that at a smaller, more granular level. So I think it's a pretty cool hybrid approach.
Gotcha. Interesting. Well, that's all we have time for. So thanks, Noah. Thanks, John. I am sure we'll be hearing more about the company in the future. But for now, thank you very much.
Thanks, Richard.
Thanks a lot.